Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Let's give it one more minute for others to join us.
Hello. Sorry, I'm late. All right, should I kick it off?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the quick summary from the morning is the first thing is there were some concerns highlighted by Adam regarding a phase 6 issue regarding the performance on some queries. So for maybe Pat and Douglas, it may make sense to sort of read up on the context if you're interested. In essence, we had a bit of a discussion on how to approach this. We came up with a course of action to address this. There are essentially two things that we can definitely do. So we're facing performance issues with a query when there are many groups and many runners involved. And so one of the big culprits of that are QA groups, and that's sort of self-inflicted. So my question was, do we have to solve this problem of making this a very performant query, or is this actually a thing that doesn't happen as often for our real customers, and can we not apply limits and then avoid doing this in the first place? And so Adam is looking into surfacing some of the data. I think he posted it in channel recently, and I think some of the very large sort of thousands of group hierarchies under a maintainer, to me, look a bit like spam. So it may actually be avoidable. And then the second thing is to actually reapproach the problem a little bit by splitting it into smaller, more composable problems, saying that maybe we can fix the first issue, and then maybe it is more acceptable that specifically returning a list of runners for like tens of thousands of groups, if that times out, you know, it's very rare potentially, and that is maybe actually acceptable rather than spending a long time perfecting this. So the team will update on it. That's it. I think we'll know more, but there is a concern because the current implementation has issues and we need to find ways to addressing it. I think from a product standpoint, for me, the best way of solving this would be to not allow users to do some of those things in the first place, but we'll see. The second thing is, and I think Camille is here to press the final merge button. We have a merge request to run a fully decomposed CI pipeline across two databases, which essentially tells us if we're ready for phase 4, but also for phase 6, is kind of testing the end state of it, the application running two completely different databases. And it's really an interesting pattern because the changes are now 4 lines, and it looks like we didn't do any work, but the reality is that over quite a few months, we've extracted work from this MR, reduced it further and further until this is what's left. And it's very exciting because it is now in a merge-ready state. So I'm very pleased. Camille, you want to say something about it?
I think you said everything. It almost indicates that we are phase 6 ready, almost, because there are still like more work to do, but it clearly ensures that development, I mean the changes that we are introducing are phase 6 validated, including the current, including what is like already in master, but also what will be being merged in master. So technically it should kind of close a list of issues that may be opened by agents being introduced.
So we're in a good state.
I think it's, to be honest, like it's astonishing milestone. Simply.
This is really exciting news.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, so we'll hopefully get that merged. And then lastly, there was just a note. There's already a little bit of additional context around formulating a disaster recovery plan. I have not done work on that. I will do more work on it. I think the main thing for us to do is to clearly outline what we intend to do in production, what the happy path is, and then to say, okay, these are the different options that we have to reduce risk and roll back, and how long this will take, and what the potential data loss trajectory is. And I'll put on sort of my executive stakeholder hat at some point, because I think there will be quite a few questions before we get sign off. And I think I need to just write down all of the questions that people likely have, and then ideally have answers to all of them ahead of time. And I think then we need to, when we are happy with it, present it to, Sid, Eric, Jerry, Christopher, whoever needs to actually say, yes, this is acceptable to us. We accept the business risk that comes with it. Let's do it. And I think I would like formal approval on that for that. Jose has, I think, more experience with some of these sort of change requests. And I think ultimately, it will take the form of this is what we're going to do, and somebody needs to actually approve it in the issue before we do it.
Yeah, I'm also bringing this topic up in the stand up shortly today, just in about 1 hour probably. And I think the two teams, the infrastructure team and this Sharding group needs to work on this disaster recovery plan together. Because it's not only for our phase 7 deployment, but also for ongoing operations. We need to be prepared in case something happens.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Jose.
You repeat, Fabio?
No, we'll involve you as well, because I think you will execute you will click the big button and say, this is happening now.
I think one thing that I would like to add is we're gonna come up with different scenarios. Each of these scenarios will have different risks and different time to the recovery, but also different outcome in terms of the data loss in the scenarios, from no data loss at all, but very development heavy, to some data loss, but very fast to execute. So I think they're gonna be an interesting challenge, because at some point we're gonna pick a scenario, and we gonna have to run this scenario a few times on staging or some environment to ensure that if we have to do it, we actually validated that all of these things are covered. So I think, Jose, this is probably gonna be coming your way at some point, to also weigh the complexities of validating that, but also executing that on actual life environment, like production, if we have to do it. So I think this is a note to you, Jose, about what may be coming your way very soon on understanding these implications, because we're gonna be balancing between no data loss, but very long and very heavy development, to some data loss, but very robust to execute. And we need to figure out our threshold and our metrics, and what is time frame that we accept, and we make a decision on executing disaster recovery. Because I think in some cases we may simply say we are past point of no return, and we rather go to fixing instead of reverting. But I think it's also be a challenge of defining this criteria well.
Yeah, Camille, I agree with you. Principally because just following the sequence of primary keys, if you're inserting two databases at the same time, the information to fix this is a big problem. So we'll need to do some merges of data, it's pretty hassle work. So I understand that we should test the procedure, principally in an environment with load. So then we have to have a discussion that I want to follow up with Fabian, because like the problem in the benchmarking environments, like we don't have the application itself running. So we have just synthetic load, but we will need an environment with load and application. Then we can test the failover itself or the whole process and see if you're having this kind of errors. Sorry.
We have a 50K reference architecture that is running on a decomposed database, or like, it's now at phase 4, right? So I think that would be something where we have an application, right? And we can generate some load, but it's still not exactly GitLab.com. But that may be something where we actually have the application and we can do something with it. Yeah, it's a great point. I think the other thing, and I'll have to think about it, is I think what we probably need to do is also determine our recommendation. And like we look at all of the data, like how we could do this, and then we should probably say like, this is the scenario that we recommend we pursue for those reasons, and this is the business risk that is associated with it. And then give a couple of alternatives, but explain why we think they're bad ideas, right? Because ultimately, I think it will be more successful if we give people sort of the, this is what we think you should do, right? And these are the alternatives, if for business reasons we can't do it, but here are the downsides, right? Because it will always be trade-offs. We will not be in a position where we'll have no data loss and perfect recovery within like 30 seconds or something. That's not going to be the reality, right? And so I think that's how I'm thinking about it. And I don't think we know exactly yet, what all of these scenarios are.
Jose,
I would.
Go ahead, Camille.
Okay, I think one thing, you talked about failover. There are two things I think to consider. Failover is one thing, which is like the an ability to acquire log and have a synchronization to actually to start writing into new authoritative database, so basically disconnect CI cluster, which is like one thing. But the second thing is like, after we do failover and we start writing into separate cluster, if we discover something that breaks, what we actually do then? And disaster recovery is what we were thinking is about like the second scenario. We successfully executed failover. We started writing, but we actually discovered critical problem for whatever reason. And what this reason is yet to define. But we actually are at the point that we have two databases. And it's not so straightforward to get back to the single database, which is like our known application behavior prior to the failover. So disaster recovery is specifically to target the second scenario that we run two databases. We disconnected them and we started writing. So there is like a split brain problem between CI data on main and CI data in general on the CI database, and what we actually do then, and how quickly we can recover if we have to be running on the single database.
Or if we even think that's a good idea, right? Because that's the other question, is like, if it turns out that it's so difficult to go back, right, then it means we have to go forward, and that becomes also really risky, right? Because we can't know ahead of time what problems we'll have, and I think this is that's the discussion to have, and I need to think about it a little bit more, right? I think this is the most tricky thing. There's, in my disaster recovery brain, I would also like to know, it's like, we start doing this and then we have a power outage while we're doing it, and all of a sudden everything goes up, right? Like, what do we do, right? And I think we have answers to quite a few of those things, but it would be useful to write all of them up, and then we can take it from there.
Also, if we do if we decide to roll back to the original database, as Camille said, we are not back to stage 6, we are back to stage 1 or stage 4 maybe. right?
Yeah. Well, we'll probably go back to stage 6, but we'll see.
Okay, my question, do we actually need to identify DRIs from each functional group? But I think within this group, I know that the people, I suggested the people these names to work on this DR plan, Fabian, of course, and Jose. And on the development team, who will be the best to partner with Fabian and Jose? And also, I have another question for Jose. I think this DR plan also involves a lot of, SRE effort. Do we actually need a SRE counterpart here to work along with us? I'm seeing.
Yes, it's a good point.
Okay, we'll bring that up in the stand-up as well.
Thank you.
Camille, can I volunteer you for the development DRI position for this?
I have few ideas. I think I can contribute to the solutions. Let's see how it goes.
Sounds good. I also would like to highlight that these are actually really good discussions to have, right? It's like we're now in the point where we think we're going to do this, and now we need to figure out what happens if things go wrong. But it's a much better problem than we don't even know if we're going to do it or not, right? So it's I'm happy about it.
And actually, we also slightly ahead of the time on these discussions, so we actually have quite some time yet to figure out the answers to that. So I hope we just have we don't have to rush on doing quick win, but rather we actually can evaluate a best option that give us the least amount of the stress associated, because it's gonna be pretty big moment when we click this deploy button or failover button. and I really also liked you when you were doing this PG upgrade, you were kind of saying, I'm gonna do that, yes, I'm gonna do that, yes. And in the end it was so boring to do.
Yes.
It just worked. And I would really do whatever we can do to make this as boring as it was before.
Yes. I mean, I think that we shouldn't underestimate, well, maybe this is optimistic, right? But I feel that the way we are rolling out all of these changes to begin with, right, is de-risking a lot of it, right? Because ideally the application already uses a lot of the code. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are doing this phased rollout, so that the last step when we actually need to do the failover is as boring as possible, and we don't have to deploy so much new stuff, right? And I think I'm quite optimistic that we're going to be successful with this. Famous last words.
I think we're gonna be fine, because as soon as we deploy phase 4, we're gonna effectively see if we do something finicky, like a cross operations, because we're gonna see that you on the PG bouncer and also on the application level. So we definitely have a lot of these validation moments before the final deploy. So I mean, from my perspective, given our steps and phases, I kind of estimate the disaster recovery plan as executing that is maybe a winning in the lottery of some sort. But it's still a chance to win in the lottery, right? So
yeah. Well, I think it's the typical, low probability, high impact thing that we're preparing for, right? And so I think it's good practice. I just need to know when it's happening so I can go on vacation. I said that several times. So Cool. That's it. Patrick and Douglas, do you have any support needs at the moment?
No.
Good. All right, that's it then. Thank you for the update. And I'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you very much.
Bye.